Hi, I'm Kathleen of the Chronic Pain Journal. Happy National Pain Awareness Week. I decided to do a video instead of typing because I found that typing is exacerbating my pain, and I miss writing, and I miss communicating with all of my fellow painies out there, and I thought it would be fun to try something new. I also want to make a disclaimer that any information that I give out in these video clips is purely my opinion as a pain patient, and I am not offering medical advice, and it's not a substitute for medical advice, and that you should always consult your doctor about any treatment that you receive. However, what I wanted to give you guys is maybe a guideline on how to create your own chronic pain journal. Every time you go to a new specialist, they're always asking you for all the information and tests, all that kind of stuff that you've done, the medications that you've been on, etc., etc. I think it's really helpful for you to track it on your own, and it's actually pretty easy once you get the full document together and you kind of track everything down. So here's a bit of a framework that I've done that I take to all of my specialists or pain clinics or whoever I'm going to see for whatever treatment that they can just put in my file. The first page has your name, contact information, date of birth, height, weight, anything like that. You know they're going to ask you that anyway, so it's helpful to put it down. The next thing is to put down your general practitioner's name, address, contact number, email if applicable, and then do all of your specialists. Every specialist you've seen, what their name is, what their specialty is, where you saw them, the date, how long you saw them for, and their contact information. The next one to do is your medications. List any medications that you've taken over the course of your pain history. Make sure you put down the dosages, who prescribed them, and also how you reacted to it. Did it work? Did it not work? And if you had to change dosages, I would suggest putting that in the history as well. The next thing is the tests. All those blood tests, CT scans, x-rays, etc. Write down the dates that you had them, what type of test you had, where you had them, who was the doctor that referred them, and if at all possible, if you have copies of those results, I suggest putting those in your file as well. In future, it's always helpful if you can ask for a copy of the test results for you to retain for yourself. It's a lot easier to be able to take this file that I'm helping you to create to your doctor than relying on office staff of your general practitioner to forward it over. And especially if you're seeing several specialists, you've got stuff happening all over the place, and it's helpful for you to consolidate it all. The next thing you should do is do a little bit of more personal information. So your home life, what is your home situation? How is it working? Who's in your family? Who's involved? Anything like that. They're going to ask you that in the interview anyway, so you might as well put it down. The other thing is your work history. If you've had to go on disability, for how long you were on disability, if you've not been able to go on disability, or if you just had to stop work altogether and don't have any benefits. Another thing that's helpful is to do a timeline. Start with the date of the initial onset of pain, if it was an accident or an injury or it just all of a sudden kind of happened, and how that pain changed. Try to include any of the descriptive words that you, I'm sure, are familiar with: throbbing, burning, aching, punishing, cruel, all of those kind of things. It's helpful for them to know. Any other treatments that you've had as well. So if you've had acupuncture, acupressure, light therapy, prolotherapy, anything like that, who this person was that you saw, how long you did the treatment for, if it worked, if it didn't work, why you stopped, what have you, and anything else that you can include. A lot of times if you're going to a traditional Western medicine doctor, if you've done anything alternative, they don't really want to hear about it, but I think it's important to include it. Finally, I also think you should include your philosophy on your pain and your wants in regards to treatment. You have to be very clear and forthright with them about how you feel about medication, how you feel about any treatment that they offer you. I think it's also important to explain the financial limitations that you may have, because so many of these alternative therapies are not covered by government plans or by work plans. I'm not totally familiar with the US, but I know in Canada we have our regular government or provincial coverage, which covers basically nothing that's alternative for pain. However, on a business or work plan, some things may be able to be covered. Make sure you investigate any sort of coverage that you have through work. You may be surprised to find that you will have a couple of massage therapy options there if that helps you. And more as naturopathic medicine is becoming more mainstream, you may have some coverage there as well. So be sure to do that. I'd like to keep doing these video sessions, but I also want you out there, all my fellow painies, to tell me what you'd like to hear about. I'd like to cover some of the treatments that I've had, but again, I'm not offering it as medical advice. I'd also like to share some funny stories and some really inspiring stories. And I know that sometimes when it seems really dark and an awful place to be, when you're right in the grips of pain, just try to remember that you're not alone, that you do have people around you that understand and can empathize, and there's lots of portals out there for you to find someone who suffers from the same type of pain as you, and that you're not crazy, and that you're not a drug seeker, and that you're not attention seeking, that you're living in pain. And because it's invisible, not many people believe it. I have one other piece of advice when going to a new doctor, or even going to a follow-up session or to a test result, is try and have someone there with you. First of all, it's really good for moral support, because as other non-painies don't understand, just even driving to the test and waiting in a waiting room if a test has been delayed, or lying in an MRI tube, or just simply the stress of having to go through another test, can trigger a pain spiral. And it's helpful to have a friend around to help you. Also, if you're listening to the doctor, sometimes you can't hear everything that they're saying, or you may hear it in a different way than someone else. So having another set of ears is very helpful, because they may be able to give you some of the information that you might have missed. Another thing too is that when you're giving your story, sometimes doctors will talk over you, or sometimes doctors will steer you in a different direction. And that sort of distracts you from what your mission was of the information that you wanted to give them in the first place. So having someone there with you will be helpful, because maybe they can fill in the gaps or stop you. Also, when going into a new appointment, try and make a list of the questions that you want answered before you go in there. If you've done any research on any of the symptoms that you're having and you have questions, make sure to write that down and ask about it to the doctor. And sometimes they're not that happy about bringing in internet research. I've had a few doctors scoff at me for bringing that in, but hey, I'm going to try and learn everything I can about my situation. So I'm wishing you all, again, hopefully, a pain-free National Pain Awareness Week. And I'll try and do a posting maybe next week. See ya!